So recently, the House approved a bill to raise the minimum wage for the federal minimum wage, I believe, to $15 an hour across the United States. It was approved by 231 against 199 votes that cut largely upon party lines, apparently. And this has been something that the radical left have been banging the drum about for quite some time, and the centrists in the voting process succeeded in lengthening the phase-in period from 5 to 6 years, which is something, I suppose. Now, I'm not really pro or anti minimum wage increases. I mean, I'm obviously completely sympathetic to the needs and desires of the people working in low-paid jobs to have better pay, but I think that changing the conditions around which their pay is being suppressed is probably wiser than just legislating directly to increase the minimum wage, because it seems to be that you've got an illness that you're treating the symptoms of rather than the cause. So I don't know why we don't just go straight for the cause, because then we don't have to keep treating the symptoms. The cause is, of course, mass immigration. When you have too many people, or not, in a certain area, you only have a limited number of jobs, and you turn the market into a buyer's market for labour. So the wages go down. That makes life harder for the working people in that area. And if you allow more people to come into this area of low skill, then you increase the competition for labour and reduce those wages even further. Not what I would recommend, but what do I know? I'm no economist. I'm just some guy on the internet. So this has been approved. And it's apparently supported by the majority of voters. 55% thought that it was a wise idea to raise it to $15 an hour, and another 27% said it should be increased but to a lesser amount. Which is fair. I mean, these people are the working people of the country. Of course they want higher wages. Why wouldn't they? Now, you've got a lot of economists on the other side saying, well, hang on a second. A $15 minimum wage actually does quite a lot of damage. This is from the Employment Policies Institute. So they'll say, let's do the math. A typical franchisee sells about $2.6 million worth of burgers, fries, shakes, and Happy Meals each year, leaving them with $156,000 in profit. If that franchisee has 15 part-time employees on staff, $15 hourly pay requirement eats up 3/4 of their profitability. For some locations, a $15 minimum wage wipes out their entire profit. Recouping these losses isn't as simple as raising prices. If it was as easy to add a big price increase to a meal, it would have already been done without a wage hike to trigger it. And not only that, you're also reducing the number of units you sell in any business. So the amount of profit you bring back in is probably going to be lower, or at least not significantly increased, I would guess. But again, I'm no economist. This has been tried in Seattle since 2015, and the results have been mixed. It hasn't been a massive, dramatic catastrophe. There hasn't been a giant fleeing of, like restaurants and things like that from Seattle or anything like that. But the Vox analysis of this suggests that it might be because Seattle is a specific example. For example, it's a wealthy and quite left-leaning city. So if you've got a lot of wealth and there's a lot of reason to go there anyway, it's something that the city can bear. It might not work so well in some rural, Midwestern area where you don't have these kinds of advantages, but, who knows. But as they say, Seattle did this for all companies with 500 employees or more, which again wasn't a dramatic crash for any large businesses, but obviously it doesn't really affect the smaller businesses because it's 500 employees or more. I mean, a restaurant, for example, doesn't have to have this $15 minimum wage, but they do say that not all of the consequences of this were good. They found that the policy reduced hours worked in low wage jobs by 6 to 7%. While hourly wages such as jobs increased by 3%, consequently, total payroll for such jobs decreased. So, overall, the working people ended up making less money, which is what the Bernie Sanders campaign found out when they decided they were going to pay their staff $15 minimum wage. Because this is something that the radical left, this is a drum that the radical left have been beating for a long time. They are for open borders and they are for high wages, and they don't seem to understand the conflict with these two desires. So naturally they harass the Sanders campaign, say, well, you're the guy who's suggesting $15 minimum wage all the time. Why don't you pay your staffers $15 minimum wages? And the campaign said, okay, we will do, but we're going to have to cut the hours of the staffers themselves because we just can't afford to keep this many people on. So at the end of the day, this wasn't actually as good as you might think for the people working for Bernie Sanders. It turns out that when you have a limited amount of money, the way it's distributed between people actually matters, and you actually find yourself with certain constraints on how you spend it, and you can't just say we want it all and we want it all now. But anyway, the Washington Post first reported that Sanders field staffers were upset that Sanders championed a $15 minimum wage on the campaign trail and then paid them against corporations who paid them starvation wages, even as he paid his own employees made poverty wages, which I don't know what the difference is. So anyway, he agreed to do the $15 minimum wage, but he's had to cut the number of hours, obviously. And this is just something that is going to be a consequence of demanding higher wages, because the Bernie Sanders campaign is not made of money. I mean, they're probably one of the most well-funded campaigns in the US, actually. But that still doesn't mean that that this is, an infinite font of money. And you've got columnist and humorist Stephen Miller saying, for the first time in his life, socialist Bernie Sanders practices economics, and buddy, the results are hilarious. Why won't millionaire Bernie Sanders, who owns 3 homes, instead of cutting hours, pay his staff a living wage? The people are starving. Well, I mean, it's one of those things where it's quite nice to see. There's a neon taster made it into Fox News. It's quite nice to see that the direct results are palpable for the Sanders campaign, and I suspect probably if done on a wide scale, there will be a replication of this across the United States. But the point is that enough? Is it okay? You've got your $15 minimum wage. Surely we're all happy now, aren't we? Aren't we? Aren't we? No, we're fucking not. Rashida Tlaib, minimum wage should be $20 an hour, not $15 an hour. I guess there are just too many people employed. Like, why not $500 an hour, Rashida? Just out of interest. Why only $20 an hour? That's basically starvation wages. I think it'd be $500 an hour. Why the hell not? What's the reason? What's the rationale? Where did you pluck this $20 an hour number from? Why not 25? Why not 30? I don't know, and she doesn't explain it. But she's called for a minimum wage of $18 to $20 on Sunday, an increase over the $15. Speaking at an event in Detroit supporting One Fair Wage, an organisation that lobbies for restaurant workers to be paid the federal minimum wage for non-tip workers, which I think is fair. I hate the culture of tipping in America. We're not tippers in the United Kingdom. You tell me what you want to be paid, and if I agree to it, I will pay it. But don't tell me what you want to be paid and then expect me to give you extra money on top of that. I don't know why. I just find that offensive. But the funny thing is, like, if you're going to do it for big companies, then restaurant workers generally, unless it's like a big franchise, like small businesses, they're not going to get that extra money. And the thing is, all you're doing really is reinforcing the corporate hegemony, because you're making it more appealing to work at giant corporations. Why do you want that? Surely you want small businesses to thrive, because small businesses, like, that the money remains in the local area. You enrich that area rather than like extracting the wealth, sending it back to some head office and having sent somewhere else in the world. That the money remains in the local area, so it enriches the local communities. It's spent in that area. I would think that's more preferable, but again, I'm no economist. I don't know. I'm just saying it just seems to be sensible to me. But anyway, like I'm saying, there appears to be no end to this. I mean, I saw a tweet by Ilhan Omar, where they just repeat, we need a $15 minimum wage, we need a $15 minimum wage. No, we need a $20 minimum wage, Miss Omar. Rashida Tlaib, your fellow squad member, has declared it. And is she wrong? Is it not the progressive thing to do? To put more people out of work so an even smaller section of people can have more money. That seems very progressive to me. I don't see what the counter-argument is. But like I said, there's no end to it. The demands will keep coming. They will keep demanding and demanding and demanding because they are not the ones bearing the cost. The taxpayer already pays their wages, like $130,000 a year. To them, this is someone else's money, and so they can spend it however they like.